Welcome to my video on what has changed in CMMI version 3. My name is Neil Potter. I am with the Process Group and I have been a lead appraiser and instructor for over 30 years. So today we'll discuss the reasons for the changes, a summary of them, how you could use version 3 in your organization, appraisal method changes, transition dates, and a conclusion from myself. So let's firstly discuss the main reasons for the changes. So the main changes in version 3 are driven by the parent group of the model, Saga, based in Chicago, and primarily it is to promote new practice areas, new topic areas. These ones here I'll go through in more detail, and then change the architecture of the model to be simpler for them to then maintain and make updates behind the scenes. So let's take a look at these changes in a bit more detail. We have these new practice areas. Now I'll go through them briefly. They are really kind of small, but there's several of them. One is the data management model. Now a long time ago, maybe 10-15 years ago, there was a data management model, like a big document with many details, and some companies were using that to manage their internal data in the company. It could be customer data, IT kind of data, employee kind of data. And so that has been now shrunk down into one practice area of 6 practices, and that's now an optional practice area you can add to the scope of an appraisal. So if you are in the IT kind of data warehouse, data management area, and you need better ways to organize and manage data, then you might consider DM as an additional scope for your improvement effort and therefore the appraisal. That goes along with that is data quality. Then we have enabling virtual work. Now, back in the beginning of the pandemic timeframe, kind of early 2020, the lead appraisers and partners that used to teach courses and do appraisals like myself, before that point, we were always doing things in person at the client location. And then as of the lockdowns and the pandemic, we went virtual kind of over the weekend. And so the Institute kind of put in a practice area to better manage that. So the idea was to maintain the brand of the Institute and do things well virtually, through audio cameras, Zoom and Teams. Then the idea was that the lead appraiser, like myself, would have to put a plan together to show that we were thinking about cameras and audio and networks and IT kind of stuff, and having a plan for how we would then operate that, and if there was a issue, what our backup plan would be. And that was pretty much drummed into us for a couple of years, taking courses and online surveys and doing plans and whatever. Effective, it worked just fine, but making sure that the virtual delivery worked kind of well. After a while, it became kind of second hand or second nature, but they kept the practice area in the model, and the idea they think that people will then use that to improve how they do virtual delivery of regular work. My opinion is they think that's old hat. We're going to know how to do virtual delivery by now, 3-4 years on, and so I don't think many people will use it, but it's there in the model should you have a challenge like that. Now, workforce empowerment, back in the 90s there was a model called the People CMM, and the People CMM was discussing employment and hiring and empowerment and training and resourcing and benefits and whatever of a people workforce in a company. And it had been adopted, I think, quite a bit in maybe South America and particularly India. I never saw much of it being used in the West, but it was out there for quite a long time and you could appraise. That's been shrunk down from a big kind of fairly complete model down to these practices here. So if you have a need to improve the way you manage staff and people in the company, you might look at that one over there. Now, back in the 90s, there actually was a safety model and even a security model. They never got particularly well used, for as I could tell, but they were out there as a practice area. They have been reconfigured now under these new ones, ESAF and ESEC. And the idea is if you have major safety concerns, or you worry about safety in the building, in the business, or security like data security, IT security, then you might consider these 2 practice areas to be added to. Now, the government, at least the US government, has its own parallel, very detailed cyber model. that they're promoting over the last couple of years that is a lot more detailed than this one here. And so I think you'd either choose this or choose that, or maybe if you chose the government one because you had to do that, you could then get credit because this is a subset of that other model. They're really competing models, although they have similar kind of content. This one's a far less detailed than that one. But again, if you're trying to get started on managing security issues, then that would be a good one to pick. And then managing security threats like attacks. Again, if there's a consideration in your company, that could be one good one to look at too. Now, these practice areas are really optional. You don't have to adopt them. The idea is that if you have the concern or the need or whatever the challenge in the company, you might look at them and figure out that would be a good thing to work on too, to improve upon. But you can do an appraisal, even a DEV and services appraisal, like you have been up to now, and not decide to include these in the scope of the appraisal. I'll discuss some of the implications coming up in a second if you decide to add these to your scope. But that's the primary purpose of version 3, is to promote the new practice areas. Now, the other reason they are doing version 3 is to promote this new architecture, kind of new layout. And basically what it means is that the definition of level 2, back here the old version, that has changed to this kind of version over here, the whole green square, kind of version 3. Now, this makes life, I think, easier for them behind the scenes to update software, websites, do appraisals, whatever. But to you and I, the kind of users, it basically says that if you want to be ML2, Maturity Level 2, before you would focus on this kind of collection here, the green square, and you'd be good to go. Like a roadmap or a stepping stone approach to level 3, which would be the whole blue and the green square. In the new architecture, the new version 3, the idea is that Maturity Level 2 has changed now to every practice area, but only to the rudimentary kind of level of practices, or what's called CL2 up here. So you have to visit everything, or look at everything, but at a rudimentary kind of level. So the philosophy over the years, and I've been involved in this since actually before day one, so I'm well aware of what the philosophy was at the beginning. The philosophy at the beginning was, if you have an organization and they're in chaos and crisis, where do you start? Where do you start? And the idea was you start with basic planning, estimation and tracking, and change control to get some visibility over the work and knowing where you stand. And then when you've got those mastered, you could then master the other areas kind of in level 3, the blue ones. Not that you had to not do the other ones, you actually could do peer reviews and testing, although you may be at level 1, but you wouldn't master them until you got to kind of level 2 done, and then you could master the level 3. So you could start them in parallel, but you don't expect much out of the level 3 ones until you're going to get level 2 under control. If you are doing poorly at level 2, no estimating, no planning, no tracking, a bit of a crisis, kind of nightmare, chaos, then to expect you to do very good peer reviews or very good training or risk whatever would be wishful thinking, because there's no time for doing the basic activities of coding, designing or service delivery. That was the philosophy based upon the Philip Crosby model back in the late 80s. A very, very well put together, very well thought out approach. And really the magic behind the success of the model over the years is that there was a roadmap or framework. You could actually follow the guidance and actually get better and become world-class eventually. That's changed. Philosophy has somewhat gone away. And so the idea now is that you're going to do everything in level, every practice area up to what they define as CL2. These are defined as practices in the model. I know there are line items that define this, but you do everything and then you get to maturity level 2, which if you are a level 1 group is going to be overwhelming, so I have a mitigation for that in the next couple of slides. If you happen to be a level 3 group already and you've been level 3 for a while, then there's no change because you're level 3 then, you're level 3 now, and therefore you're going to do the whole set of practice areas anyway, regardless. But if you are level 1 to level 2 or getting started, then this becomes an overwhelming kind of list. So hold on for a second, we'll discuss how to mitigate that. These practices are defined down here, or the changes, so go take a look at those. Now the practices in the DEV and services model have not changed much at all from version 2 to version 3. There's a few minor wording changes, and I put that in the link down at the bottom there. But on the whole, they haven't changed. One exception to that is the SAM. Now, these first two practices, they were in old versions of SAM, then they went away, they moved, they came back, they moved, they went away. You see the cycle here. They're back. Okay, I think they're actually very good. They basically were saying, don't pick any vendor to work with in your company. Pick one with criteria, okay, known criteria, how they're performing. So actually, the fact that they're back now, I think is a good thing, because it forces the company to actually be more careful about vendor selection versus just going with the cheapest or the most available, or because we just do that. And so it was there before in the model. The last couple of years, it kind of went away. It's kind of now back. But that's the major change to all of the practice areas, really, across the model in Dev and Services. Let's take a look at how you could use the version 3 of the model. Now, if you happen to be appraised at level 3 from before, then no change, apart from the minor wording changes in SAM. Keep on going. If you happen to be kind of new to this, and you are experiencing level 1 symptoms and just getting started, then you may find this list to be level 2 kind of overwhelming, because you're required to do everything. Level 1 would mean a lot of crisis, chaos, people working 24/7, many mistakes and problems, unhappy customers, unhappy management, just kind of a survival mode. That's kind of level 1. Then you don't have to try everything to be ML2. You could use the philosophy of the previous model and work on these level 2 things first again. So yes, you're going to end up with everything, but don't start with everything. Focus on the ML2 things first, the green ones, and get good at them, okay? Before you even attempt or really kind of master anything above. That'd be the first thing, to kind of reuse the message of the previous model that's now kind of missing out of this version here. Also look at the practice areas up here. PCM. If you look at PCM, it is a very straightforward having a plan for improvement. Well, if you're level 1, you need a rudimentary plan for improvement to kind of get going. And so maybe you have a task list with a what, who, and when to improve things. And so we're now using a small version of PCM, the old level 3, to help you implement things down here. So again, you don't have to go hog wild and crazy and do everything in PCM, but if you read it, it's a good one to pick out first, because it just says get organized about improvement. Now, risk. Risk is a very straightforward activity up here. Again, you may not be ready for risk at pure level 1, where you have no estimates and no plans, but risk is a very easy thing to do. You can do the whole thing in an hour or less, and therefore if you are doing planning activities, proposals, estimates and budgets and whatever, you might decide to add risk at a level 3 or early, because it's simple and very useful, and you can get benefit without too much complication. So let's take a look at peer reviews, for example. Peer reviews is up here. What was a more advanced practice area? If you're trying to get to level 2, the new level 2 with everything, but you're doing requirements for projects like software hardware requirements or service requirements, and you're doing service delivery like proposals and contracts, then you could easily adopt peer reviews to find mistakes in them. Probably doing that anyway, and so use a rudimentary version of peer reviews that may be a bit more advanced, but fits in very easily to the things you're doing kind of day by day anyway. And so just by looking through the model and picking a few easy things up here in the kind of blue area to help you in the green area is a way to kind of just make an attempt at some of the blue things up there without going overboard and getting kind of overwhelmed or confused. Okay, so there are things you can do in parallel and not kind of overwhelm yourself. For example, car, you don't have to do some major 25-page fishbone diagram with 400,000 bones in it. Okay, you could do a 2-question car. What is the outcome? What are the causes? And you could apply that to some successes. Now, why did the last team actually do so well? Or failures? Why did they fail? It's one level of question or two levels of question, and you can get some very good insight into your company and projects by doing CAR. So again, taking a simple version of CAR and applying that regardless of kind of where you are. So there are ways to even eat into this model, the whole thing, incrementally by figuring out kind of where you are now, what kind of problems you have, and then bit by bit adopt those things over time. Alright, so version 3 appraisal method changes, take a look at those. So in version 3 of the model, SAM is a bit more optional than before. In previous years, SAM was basically if you had a custom or semi-custom supplier, one worth managing, because the thing they give you would be basically put into your solution and your solution given to the customer, okay, customer to use, then basically they were risky enough to manage, and therefore would apply SAM. Okay. Otherwise you'd be burned by them performing poorly. And so in version 3, SAM is kind of a new domain, and a new domain means you can either include that domain or not include the domain. You can make a business decision over that. I still recommend if you have suppliers, then you use SAM, because SAM is a really easy, very useful practice area and can help you protect your interests on a contract a lot better than not doing SAM. Now, if your organization decides to adopt some of those new practice areas like data, people, or safety and security, then your appraisal team members will take a new 4-day course called the Building Organizational Capability course, and they will pass a new exam called the Practitioner exam that will cover that new model scope. Now, this is a separate path than the existing dev services path. If you're a dev or services kind of company appraised, or that's what you want to do, then you're going to take the regular out there forever foundations and services course, and your team will then pass the associate's exam like they have up to now. This expires after 3 years, like all exams, and therefore you have to retake the exam every 3 years to be on the team. So these are two paths, two separate parallel paths. You could either take the new one for the new practice areas that covers the model, or just keep with dev and services and then take the existing foundations and services. If you've been trained before, then no new courses required at all, because the model hasn't changed. Then you only have to worry about your expiration of your exam after 3 years. So an existing appraisal team that's doing dev or services, or dev and services, then if they do expire, which they will after 3 years, they would take the exam and they're good to go. Yeah. Anything else changed behind the scenes, the lead appraiser will then tell you about verbally and bring up to speed, but no extra courses are required for that. Okay. If you're a brand new organization and have not taken any course before, and you're doing dev and services, then you take this path over here. Or if you decide to take the practice areas, the new ones, you take the kind of this path over there. Now there's actually in this one over here, there's a special offer where you can self-study for that exam, this exam here, between now and March 31st next year, 2024. You could avoid the 4-day course and self-study and then take the exam, but after March 31st, 2024, that option goes away, and then you have to take the 4-day course, typically with your lead appraiser, and then take the exam afterwards. Now, as for transition dates, there have been some publications now of some dates. As of 9/29, I updated the video because of that. So January 31st is the last time to get a request for sample, which is the beginning deadline of an appraisal sequence. And so that would be 31st of January, basically just here. And when you do that, you can't start the appraisal until 35 days after. Have to be a gap, and that would imply a March 6th kind of start date. So you can also start it within 60 days, now plus or minus a couple, and that could be an April 1st start date. So the last time you get to do a sample for version 2, you'll be starting the appraisal between March 6th and April 1st, plus or minus a few days for calendar kind of math. The 13th of February is the last time they approve a sample. Now, typically samples are approved within a couple of days of the request, And so I think this is typically, this date here, the difference is just kind of resolving issues and problems with the sample. And then May 14th is the last day to finish out the last day, or the last reporting day of an appraisal over here, May 14th. And so I think if you wanted to do version 2 appraisals, I think you're looking basically for the end of March. So end of March would be a good time to get a version 2 appraisal kind of completed, and maybe avoid some of the April kind of changeover dates. I infer from the data here, that means that February 1st would be the earliest possible date to get a sample for version 3. And so if you did a February 1st sample here for version 3 and waited 35 days before day 1 of the appraisal will then start by March 6th. Again, this is based upon the dates staying as they are being published here, and the software being able to compete or deal with version 2 and version 3 at the same time. There were some problems highlighted before that the software may not be able to do that. Maybe pushes the deadlines out. Maybe there's a workaround to use Excel or other files to process data. So we're not sure about that. And so I think theoretically March 6th would be the earliest time you could do a version 3 appraisal. So I think if you wanted to do version 3 and you're doing appraisals in the March timeframe, I would say mid-March may be the most likely earliest date, but that could move out given the software's capability. And if you're trying to get appraisals finished up in their version 2, I would get them finished up by the end of March to again avoid this kind of transition stuff. Now, if there's a change to these dates, given what the software is going to be like, I will put all the updates into the article version of this subject. So conclusion, and Neil and Mary, my business partner, conclusion. So the new definition of ML2 is a shift in what the model was really about beforehand. However, the implication may not be a big one because not many people actually target ML2. Okay? Most people do target ML3, and therefore they wouldn't notice. Now, I have a couple of clients that target ML2 for different reasons, and if they do that, you might look at it and figure out, if I'm going to do every practice area, then why not just going to delay a little bit and do every practice area and then be level 3. So I think maybe the ML2 target or the need to be ML2 may kind of disappear, because why would you do all of that work and every practice area and not then look a bit further ahead at the level 3 practices at every practice area and kind of consider them? And so maybe that kind of changes. Neil and Mary, my business partner, don't plan on pursuing the new practice areas. We have no expertise in them. We're not data security kind of people, and you have to have expertise to be kind of value added to the customer versus kind of being rote. And so it's not our thing. We're dev and services people for sure, and we don't think the demand will be that high, but we don't know. Nobody actually knows, and so we don't think there'll be a huge demand for that thing. But if there is, whatever, we love our dev and services kind of world, and the clients are going to use that. That's what we're going to do best again. So we're going to stick with that. Now there's more. If you are interested in the model, any version of the model, doesn't matter, you might check out the online course. I have packed in a good 25 years of experience of doing model stuff and keeping things elegant and efficient, concise, lightweight. So if you want to know about the practice areas, examples of implementing them, whatever, take a look at the courses. I will update them for version 3. There's 4 or 5 diagrams that are going to change for version 3, but I have focused the classes on the content of the practice areas, and they have not changed for dev and services, so still applicable. If you want to read an article of how a level 3 company looks without ever referring to the word CMMI, take a look at the article. There are many videos out there and other articles. Actually, we have 25 to 30 years of articles on our website. So go take a look at them. And any questions and comments, please put them down below. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.